Everyone. I just today want to talk about Tony Khan. And I do love what a great question after every question that he gets asked. But how the evolution of Tony Khan has also had the same trajectory as AEW. Because if you look when AEW first started, brash, young company, challenging the world, taking on the establishment, being the alternative, and everything that came with it, the sort of punk attitude, look at us type thing. Although not really so much punk when you're on TNT and TBS and Warner Brothers channels, but let's talk about all the other little bits. So if you look when AEW young fresh, everybody loved Tony Khan for what he was doing for wrestling, and basically we all loved him. He never really appeared on TV. Always come out and thanked all the crowd, and still does, which I think is brilliant. During any part of the show, very rare you see him on TV. Again, I think that's a really good idea, keeping him away. And then you look at how he's evolved. So the first 2 or 3 years, everything flying high. I mean, one of the things that I do love that he did, and he has always kept, is the media scrums at the end of every big show, be it good or bad. Um, Again, he's evolved in that, and it'll be interesting to see what he's like on Sunday for Full Gear. Because if you take a look at how he was on the Hariawani show and even on the media call today, or yesterday, as I'm recording this on Friday, he was very good. It looked like he had media training. It looked like he had a direction for AEW and wasn't going to get into the spats that he probably got in before, or saying things like he said before, when he was running down WWE or taking pot shots at WWE, like the wrestlers were as well. So when we look at all of that, has he matured over the years? Yes. But what I turn around and say is how he has matured and how he is now to how AEW have grown or not grown, depending on how you look at it. Me personally, I think they have grown over the years. You might say, going back to a previous video where I said about ratings, but then again, every company is going to go through ups and downs, especially in their young career. And you look at TNA, WWE, Ring of Honor, even though he owns it. They kept going. New Japan, CMML, AAA. So you look at all of them; they've been going a lot longer than AEW. So basically, we look at AEW at the start with Tony Khan and how the promotion was seen. Shiny new toy, everybody loved it. Doing fantastic numbers. The first pay per view. Did great numbers. What was it? 14,000 people in attendance, and wow. So you look at that, then we move forward to a couple of years, well, probably about year 2 or year 3, the change in WWE as well. So they coincided. Tony Khan, and he's openly admitted that he sort of let other people take a little bit more control over them periods on storytelling, what was going on with the company and everything else like that, although still being there every week, being in control. And how his attitude, all his Twitter spats with fans, calling out fans and various various bits like that. So we look at that and how them years were really down, where it wasn't great storytelling. Although during that period they did do Wembley Stadium for All In and 81,000 people or 72,000 people, or however many you want to say. But no matter what, it was a massive success. And even the following year when they did 50,000, any company, wrestling company, whatever, would be happy to do 50,000 even at Wembley Stadium. So let's not take that into account. But the product wasn't great. The storyline was a bit iffy. Chris Jericho constantly being on our TV. Thank God he's not at the moment. But although I do think he'll come back to a big pop and hopefully have a last little good retirement run like Sting did. I really hope and I hope it's with AEW and not WWE, because I just feel they will give him a better send off than WWE. And you just got to look at the John Cena run, how that's not really panned out how everybody thought with the WWE. But that's neither there. A little sidetrack note. But going back to Tony Khan during what 2.5 to 5 years. So the company's about 6 years old. How he really had to twist about how he would take shots at WWE. He would have little shots at anybody really that would talk negative on his product, and leaving cards subject to change till really late, which was infuriating because how are we to know what to watch or what we're going to do? Oh yeah, are we going to watch it? You know, the storylines were terrible. Let's not beat around the bush. But then you look at how 2025 has gone. And he said in interviews that he is taking more control and a lot more involved in the storylines, like he was back when AEW started and how it was when he first got involved with it. You know, he was very hands on and also he had to approve everything and stuff like that. And he said he's gone back to that. And I think we're now seeing the fruits of that. Although we all had our doubts on the Death Rider story at the beginning of the year, I think that has really improved. But again, this is where I'm going back to what a great question. Because that's all, whenever anybody asks him a question, 9 out of 10 times, that's all he ever turns around and says. But I feel he is now winning the media over. I think he's had training, definitely he's had training on media and how to deal with it and how to handle questions. I also feel that he's now starting to understand and embrace the role a lot better and be a lot more authoritative. If you look at the CM Punk thing and the footage, is it as bad as he says? No, I don't think so. That's my personal opinion. But I wasn't there at the time. I was in the venue, but I wasn't there at the time, so we don't really know. And how he handled all of that situation. And then going on, oh yeah, we had the footage, it was really good for ratings and stuff like that. Really? It wasn't. And it turned a lot of people off your product and it showed that you were a little bit petty. And in hindsight, I think deep down him, the Bucks and everybody involved in all of that really wish they hadn't done it, because that was the start of a massive decline in the company. But going into 2025, and how he has really stepped up, and I think he stayed off Twitter. He's not really got into any spats on with anybody apart from a couple of people that I don't think are worth mentioning, because I don't want to give them any publicity. Because if you know or you want to go and search, you can find that who that person is that I'm probably referring to. So if you look at how he is now with the media and stuff like that, he's very diplomatic. He doesn't really say anything bad about WWE. The wrestlers that have left and gone to WWE that wouldn't do jobs allegedly or there was issues with, he doesn't speak bad on them. He wishes them all the best. I mean, you can turn around and say what you want. I mean, look at how the Andrade situation happened. WWE let him go. He comes straight back to to AEW. And he always turned around and said they left on good terms. So, and that was proven, unlike maybe some of the others. But what I'm really trying to say here is the upturn in AEW at the moment partly down to his leadership, or is it down now to his trust in the media and learning to talk to the media without actually bad mouthing anybody and being respectful for the business? Or, which I think he always had respect for the business, and don't take that any other way. But as a respect, when I mean that, as a respect for the whole industry, not just AEW, and taking digs at anybody, because he was very good at doing that and for fan engagement and stuff. And he go, oh yeah, any publicity is good publicity. But it has really struggled, and it has really struggled. You've only got to look at attendance. Although you look now, they're going up more and more. Is that down to ticket pricing and the WWE ticket pricing? I don't know. But I think the major change that's happening in WWE is TKO's money orientation as where AEW and Tony Khan have, I think, taken a step back towards probably the middle of last year, reevaluated the whole situation with a plan going into 2025. I think that's when he had his media training, knowing what he was doing was alienating some fans, um, and playing into a hardcore audience instead of trying to be a bit more mixed and stuff like that. You look at the difference between the Arawani shows, the first one he did to the last one. Although it was very sort of both, you could see both were a little on edge. That's my personal feeling. But as it grew, Tony answered all the questions. I wish Ariel Wani would grill WWE people that come on like he did with Tony Khan, but then again, that's never going to happen. Let's not beat around the bush. But everything, even the media scrum yesterday, you look at how he answered everything. It was all very constructed. It was all very Tony Khan-ish in a way, but he wasn't having a dig. It was all quite positive. Although everything Tony Khan does is never is what am I trying to say? Is never really answered. He will waffle and go talk for a long time without actually answering the question. Hence, Britt Baker, Chris Jericho, people like that are when are they coming back? And the way he sort of answered that. So you've got to take your hat off to him for that. But I think the upturn and the positiveness that's suddenly coming around AEW, I think is because in the latter part of last year, Tony Khan stepped back, reevaluated everything, and then took a lot more mature approach, which you would start to expect. They've gone through their honeymoon period, and they've gone through a really rough time over the last 12 to 8, they had 2 years really, let's say, when they had really struggled. People were so anti the product. But then again, still being anti AEW is still very good for these content creators because it engages clickbait. You've only got to look at all the ex-wrestlers or the older people that will always have a dig at it because it's different, it's new and it's fresh, and they are pushing boundaries for TV and not staying stagnant. They're seeing how far they can push TV. Look at Blood and Guts. That was on national TV and they pushed it. You won't see WWE do that. You won't see Ring of Honor do that. You won't see TNA do that. You really won't see any real company apart from the independent CWs and stuff like that, CWs and people like maybe a GCW. But you won't see that on mainstream TV. So they're really pushing the boundaries, and it got fantastic reviews. Everybody loved it. So I feel like we give Tony Khan a hard time, and we did give Tony Khan a hard time. But can we give him praise for how he has came about and really changed in the last year? Because that's the most important thing. And the turnaround is slowly happening there. And we don't know how many people are watching on Max. We know that in the UK it does really good. Even the Triller Plus, AEW Plus does well, as we all watch it live or in the morning. So have we now turned the corner on Tony Khan to back to how we saw him? Because when we first saw him, we were, he's great, he's X, Y, Z, he's the best thing to happen to wrestling, he's the Booker of the Year, he's X, Y, and Z. Then we had that period where everything he did was wrong, even what the product was, or the storylines and everything that had come, and maybe letting wrestlers have a little bit more control than they should have. But at the start of this year, he's taken all that back, and now look at the product. It's very good. The storylines are a lot better. The Death Rider one, I'm glad we let play out to how they wanted. It's now coming to hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months the conclusion of what probably Moxley had in place all the way along, and making stars. Look at Hangman winning that title All In. Was that the right call? Yes. Who made that call? We don't know if it was Tony Khan. He made the right call, which it probably was. You look at the whole pushing Carl to win against Moxley and all of that story. Probably John Moxley was part of that, but Tony Khan would have had to sign off on it. So again, he's now looking at it, what's best for the product and storytelling, and trying to build stars. Look at Carl Fletcher. And I think this is the next evolution of we will see from Tony Khan and AEW is now the making of stars. You've got MJF that's doing well in Hollywood, and films and stuff like that. Hopefully he'll be back very, very soon. But he's going to be in and out now because of his movie career. But that's only going to aid AEW, and if they use him correctly, will only increase viewership like The Rock does with WWE when he comes back, or Cena when he comes back. Hopefully, MJF can start to have that shine as his movie career grows, and wish the guy all the best in the world on that. But I do feel that we need to start to judge Tony Khan and AEW for what they're trying to do and forget what happened in the past and all the hate that is towards AEW and Tony Khan, because they were the alternative. They were what we were calling out. They are pushing boundaries with some of their matches that are shown on TV and some of the stuff that they do on their pay-per-views. But that's the whole idea of being an alternative. You want to be different. They've taken the best bits from the indies to the best bits of pro wrestling and tried to fuse it together. And that, you've got to give your hats off to Tony Khan and the Khan family. One, for backing Tony. Two, for Warner Brothers backing him on this project. But I feel as we see this more mature, grown up Tony Khan, I feel we're going to start to see AEW really flourish in the next 18 months. I think this, I think that he's taken a step back, reevaluated, and looked what worked at the very beginning. And that was being the alternative, being different, pushing boundaries, and going on storylines that he that he believes in more than maybe the wrestlers pitching ideas at him. Going, yes, I quite like that idea, but we need to look at X, Y, and Z. And I think this is what has happened in this year. So Tony Khan, when he always goes, what a great question, he never answers a question. But I also think he is trying to learn how to use the media to his advantage. And he is now doing it. And as he turns around and says, he sits on a lot of NFL committees now, and with his dad and things like that. So I think that has helped him, and I think that has made him really judge how he perceives himself and how AEW has been seen. And if you look, the change that has really happened, especially over the last 8 to 9 months with him, even the media scrums, he has really, really changed, and are all for the positive. And I think when you lead from a positive situation, which I think Tony Khan is now, and he sounds like the locker room is a lot better now, a lot more in sync with everybody, and a lot more harmony, which I think is going to obviously help. But I also think if you throw shade and negativity around everybody and all your competition, you are seen as negative. And I think he's realised that. And with the Twitter spats and replying to fans and getting people winding people up or whatever you want to call it, he turned and said, yes, but all the engagement's good and it makes them watch it. It doesn't. It turns us off. And that is the major change. He has stepped away from Twitter like he was 2 or 3 years ago. He has stepped away from taking digs at everybody. He's looked at his product. How can he improve it? How can he make it better? The CMLO tie-up, that has been fantastic. And we get Lucha, he's putting Lucha more on a bigger stage now with people seeing that. And you look at them running the Mexico Arena. You look at how they use some of the New Japan talent. I really wish they would use a little bit more, and I really wish the tie-in with Stardom would really help. I think, hearing rumours that Anna Jay's contract is up, she would really benefit going to Stardom. I mean, they have a good working relationship. Look at Megan Bain, look at Mira Shirakawa, Mariah May when she was with AEW, Tony Storm, all of these came from Stardom, or you've got TWP, Tokyo Joe Pro Wrestling, hook up with some of them, where they're going to learn this different style, which we all love, and it's different, and it will give them the reps and give them the in-ring time. And I think Tony Khan will start to look at that as well as a more of a not development for AEW, because that will probably be the wrong way to look at it. But I think you'll start to see a lot more of the younger talent appearing on CMLL, on Ring of Honor. Not so much Ring of Honor, probably New Japan, Stardom, TWJP, stuff like that. Because I think, and maybe a few more of the indie shows and independents, like maybe Defy or stuff, Rev Pro. So all of these people, I think you're going to start to see a lot more tie-ins, and I think that's part of the international belt as well. I think that's all part of his bigger plan for 2026. So can we just back off giving Tony Khan a hard time? Because he's learned from his mistakes, and shouldn't we appreciate someone who learns from their mistakes and let them grow? And we all make mistakes, and at the time, yes, his dad owned businesses, yes, they owned the but it was still a young company finding its feet. And 5, 6 years in, it's finding its feet, it's finding what worked for it. But it's had to go back to the early days to figure out what went wrong. They're not hiring WWE guys really that much now, not unless they're going to bring value. As well before, they would snap them straight up. So, and they're relying on a lot more of their own talent to come through. Look at the work, as I said before, the work they've done with Carl Fletcher, Mark Briscoe, how much of a fan favourite he is. What they're doing with Kyle O'Reilly. Look at Megan Bain, how, and Marina Shafir, he's now pushing and looking at these people. So, let's just, as I said, let's just back off giving him a hard time, because if it goes back to everybody going at him and everything like this, we will go back to like we were when we didn't really all watch the product as much as we should, as we're doing again now. And I think as he's grown, as Tony Khan has grown, I think we should have understood that this is a young growing company and not held it on that pedestal of when it first came in, because there I think we all made that mistake. But then again, the way he acted with his interactions and stuff like that was not good. So it was a double-edged sword. But anyway, I just really wanted to sort of get my feelings out there about this, and I've been thinking about it for a while. So hopefully you enjoyed this little talk, rant, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully you'll like to hear more content of this. So anyway, I'm just going to say thank you all for listening. Hope you all have a pleasant rest of the day, whatever you're doing and whenever you're listening to this. And hopefully you will check out one of my videos soon. So if you'd like to like and subscribe if you've made it this far, it would be very much appreciated. Thank you. Bye.